Before the start of the year, I did not really consider 1440p plus 200Hz monitors, as I did not want to lose any FPS in competitive games, and I felt that the resolution itself would not bring me any kind of advantage in Valorant or CS. But I think I was wrong. I actually did not lose any FPS, and I gained better visibility in those games. That improvement is mainly coming from the resolution, but configuration options may matter as well. This is something that's often overlooked, and the settings can actually make or break a monitor for me. So let's go through what I like to use and what I think is important for these 1440p 27-inch monitors. For the Asus XG27AQM, it has most of the standard options that I'm looking for. For example, a well-implemented black equalizer like the shadow boost here will improve the experience for me quite a bit. With this monitor, you have the option to overclock it to 270Hz, and I of course have done it. And I'm using the overdrive mode 3 at the moment. I've been also testing 4, and I do not notice a massive difference. You have to overclock and switch the OD modes from the monitor itself, but after that you should start using the Asus display widget if you have this monitor. The display widget in itself has good options. For example, you can use AppSync to set up CSGO and Valorant to use the same profile, and then set a new profile for desktop use. The automatic profile switching does not seem to always work though, so I need to manually change them at times. The hotkeys tab is also absolute garbage because it really does not work as it should. I've bound shadow boost toggle into Control Shift and Dash, but the application doesn't save the settings, so every time I open it, all the options are disabled, so the hotkeys do not work at all. Or basically the hotkey works, but there are no options to toggle from. Another issue I've had is that shadow boost does not seem to be profile specific for some stupid reason. For example, in my gaming profile, I'd always like to have 3, but when I switch back to my desktop profile, it'll also use 3, although I've set it to 0 before. Issues like these are really irritating and make it a bit of a mess to configure the monitor properly. I had no such issues with my old 400 MSI MAG251RX and the MSI Gaming OSD. So it does piss me off that the monitor costs €800 and Asus can't make this shitty display widget to work. Let me know if you guys have these same issues with an Asus monitor and the display widget. It would make me feel of course much better if somebody else was suffering as well. There is one option that I really missed that's not available in the 27AQM, and that's sharpness. Pretty much every gaming monitor that I've had has had the setting, and the MSI MAG251RX that I previously used also had it, and I did use the setting as well. It improves visibility, and in my opinion it's easier to spot enemies when you turn up sharpness. This option is also very common with CSGO pros. Most have the sharpness set quite high from their BenQ monitors. I don't quite get why it's missing, but after the initial irritation, I can say that with 1440p monitors it's not as important as with 1080p monitors. For example, on Nuke, when the enemy is behind the blue box and I'm on top of the silo, it was pretty hard for me to see anything with 1080p and no sharpness, because the CG models are dark and so is the background right here. But with the XG27AQM, I have no issues seeing people from here. I had no issues making out models from secret because the contrast is so high, but of course with 1080p it's more of a pixel mess than with 1440p. It's still sort of easier for you to make out the enemy head model, but of course it should be fairly obvious for you to know where the head is. In terms of input delay and motion clarity, the monitor performs extremely well. I don't have the tools to test input latency myself, but if you check hardware unboxed, the same panel with a different monitor is performing very well, of course. The performance is superb, but the more interesting question for me was that how does 1440p feel in competitive games? I mostly play CSGO and Valorant, and I can confidently say that if you play with a native resolution and you have a decent PC, there is almost no reason for you to be scared of the 1440p resolution. With 1440p, the targets are larger and the image is much clearer, which can of course help with visibility. I've got pretty much the same FPS, I've locked it to 400 in CSGO, and I do not notice any difference whatsoever with these two resolutions. With about 3 weeks of use, I really do not have any reason to switch back to 1080p. For you guys who want to play stretch, there is this 1440p stretch dress that still looks very crisp. I tried it myself, and this would definitely be my choice if I wanted to play with a stretch dress. One last thing that kept me from buying a 27-inch monitor before was the size and how it would affect concentration. What makes sense is that when the monitor is larger, there is of course a lot more for you to look at. So So it can be harder for you to stay focused in a certain area, like for example in CSGO and Valorant you really have to focus on your crosshair pretty much all the time. I'm a bit all over the place when I play CS and it's hard for me to focus sometimes when nothing is happening, and I sort of keep falling asleep when I'm watching a corner. But with the larger panel it kind of feels like I'm more calm as I have more things to watch and I do not get as bored. So it kind of improves my concentration in some way. I've got no clue if this makes any scientific sense, but I'd guess for someone who is a bit hyperactive, it's better to have more things that they can focus on to keep them concentrated. This at least seems to apply for me in this case. The biggest question at the end of the day is that do you want to spend this much on 27-inch 1440p 270Hz monitor? I can say that if the improvement in productivity didn't come with this resolution and the monitor size, I wouldn't think it's necessarily worth it. Even though I now feel that 1440p is the better resolution for CSGO and Valorant. What kind of games you play of course also matters. For example, I don't lose any FPS in CSGO and Valorant, but I do lose some in Warzone and Apex. But of course the added clarity with 1440p is even more beneficial for a game like Warzone, where it's really hard to sometimes make out the enemies from the map. But hey, that was pretty much it. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you enjoy my content, hit that subscribe button, and see you in the next one.